It takes 12 bees their entire lives to make just 1 teaspoon of honey, a golden liquid that's been treasured by humans for over 8,000 years. In the United States alone, we consume more than 450 million pounds of honey each year, using it in everything from tea and toast to cosmetics and medicines. And worldwide, that number soars past 2 million tons. Honey has been used by humans for thousands of years. The oldest known record comes from a cave painting in Spain, estimated to be over 8,000 years old, showing a person harvesting honey from a wild hive. In ancient Egypt, honey was used not just as food, but also in medicine and religious rituals. Today, honey comes in many different varieties, depending on the flowers visited by the bees, the region, and the processing method. Let's take a look at some of the most common and rare types. Common types of honey are clover honey, wildflower honey, and acacia honey. However, there are much more rare and unique varieties of honey. Among those are Manuka honey, New Zealand, known for its antibacterial properties and often used medicinally. It's one of the most expensive types globally. Cedar honey, Yemen, sourced from cedar trees and valued for its strong, complex taste and health benefits. Elfish honey, often called the world's rarest honey. It's harvested from deep caves and can sell for thousands of dollars per kilogram. Heather honey, Scotland. Thick, jelly-like consistency with a rich, aromatic flavor, rare, and highly prized in gourmet markets. Which one is your favorite variety of honey, by the way? And what is your favorite way of enjoying it? Leave us a comment below the video. I'm curious to know. But no matter the variety, the process of making honey remains a perfect collaboration between nature and human care. Now let's see how it's done, step by step. The journey of honey begins long before the factory, with the art and science of beekeeping, also known as apiculture. This is where human care and natural behavior work in harmony. Beekeepers manage colonies of honeybees, often in wooden structures called Langstroth hives, which are designed with removable frames for easy inspection and harvesting. Each hive can house tens of thousands of bees, including 1 queen, hundreds of drones, and thousands of worker bees. A typical hive consists of several sections: the brood box, where the queen lays eggs, the honey supers, where the bees store honey, and a queen excluder, a mesh barrier that keeps the queen from entering the honey storage area. Location is critical. Hives are placed near diverse floral sources: clover, lavender, acacia, or wildflowers, depending on the desired honey variety. The availability and quality of nectar directly influence both the taste and quality of the honey produced. Beekeepers often move their hives throughout the year to follow blooming seasons. This practice, called migratory beekeeping, is especially common in commercial honey production. It ensures bees always have access to fresh nectar sources, and it supports pollination and agriculture along the way. Caring for the hive is more than just placing boxes outdoors. Beekeepers regularly check for signs of disease, parasites like varroa mites, and overall colony strength. The health of the hive determines how much honeybees can produce and how sustainable the process is. When flowers bloom, bees collect nectar using their long proboscises and store it in a special honey stomach. Along the way, they also gather pollen to feed young bees. Once back in the hive, they pass the nectar to other bees, who begin breaking it down with enzymes. The nectar is then placed into honeycomb cells, where bees fan their wings to reduce moisture. As the nectar thickens and enzymes continue their work, it gradually transforms into honey. Once ready, bees seal the cells with wax to preserve the honey for future use. At this point, the honey is ready for use by the colony. But for beekeepers, it signals the perfect time to harvest. In the next step, we'll see how the honey is carefully collected from the hive. With the honey now capped and ready, it's time for the beekeeper to step in. Harvesting honey is a delicate process, one that requires patience, precision, and respect for the colony. Before opening a hive, beekeepers use a bee smoker, a simple tool that emits cool smoke. The smoke doesn't harm the bees, but it does calm them. It disrupts their alarm pheromones and encourages them to retreat into the hive to protect the queen and consume honey, making them more docile. Once the hive is open, the beekeeper carefully lifts out each frame to inspect it. The goal is to find frames where the honeycomb is fully capped, a clear sign that the honey is mature and ready for extraction. Frames selected for harvest are gently brushed or shaken to remove any remaining bees. This step must be done with care to avoid harming the bees or disrupting the colony's organization. The harvested frames are then transported to a honey processing area often a dedicated honey house or factory facility. There, the next phase begins, unlocking the honey stored behind those wax seals. But not all the honey is taken. Ethical beekeepers always leave enough honey behind for the colony's survival, especially heading into the colder months. After all, honey is their primary food source when flowers are no longer blooming. With the honey safely removed from the hive and brought to the processing area, we now transition from the field to the factory, where technology takes over to help bring this natural product to your table. When honey-filled frames reach the processing facility, the wax seals covering each cell must be removed, a step called uncapping. This exposes the honey inside. In smaller setups, beekeepers use heated knives to gently slice off the wax. Larger operations rely on machines with blades or rollers to uncap both sides quickly and efficiently. The removed wax, known as cappings wax, is collected and reused for products like candles and balms. With the wax caps removed and the combs exposed, it's time to release the honey. This is where one of the most important machines in honey production comes into play: the honey extractor. In a modern facility, uncapped frames are loaded into an electric honey extractor, a large spinning drum that uses centrifugal force to pull the honey from the comb. As the machine spins at high speed, the honey is flung out of the open cells and runs down the walls of the drum. It then collects at the bottom, where it can be drained off through a valve. The honey flows slowly, thick and golden, into a collection tank. At this point, it's still raw, containing small bits of wax, pollen, and other natural particles. One of the biggest advantages of centrifugal extraction is that it preserves the honeycomb structure. The frames can be returned to the hive, allowing the bees to reuse the comb, saving them time and energy on rebuilding. From here, the honey still needs to be cleaned and prepared for packaging, but the hard part is done. What started in a flower has now become the thick, sweet liquid we know as honey. Next, we'll look at how honey is filtered and prepared for bottling. Once the honey has been extracted, it's thick, golden, and full of natural bits and pieces. These include tiny fragments of wax, pollen, and sometimes even the occasional bee wing or leg. To ensure a smooth, clean final product, the honey must be filtered. The first stage is usually coarse filtering, where honey passes through a mesh or screen to remove larger particles like wax and hive debris. This step preserves the honey's natural character while cleaning out anything unwanted. Next, the honey is often allowed to settle in large tanks. During this stage, air bubbles and any remaining tiny particles naturally float to the surface. Some producers skim this foam off the top to ensure the honey looks clear and glossy. However, not all honey is filtered the same way. Some producers choose to leave more pollen and natural particles in the honey, labeling it as raw honey, prized for its texture and nutritional value. The degree of filtering depends on the intended market. Raw or minimally filtered honey is popular among natural food consumers, while crystal clear honey is often preferred for commercial packaging. Once filtered, the honey is almost ready for bottling. In some cases, especially for highly processed, commercial-grade honey, there's one more step: pasteurization. Pasteurization involves gently heating the honey, typically around 60 to 70 degrees Celsius, 140 to 158 degrees Fahrenheit. This helps kill any yeast cells and slows down the natural crystallization process, giving the honey a longer shelf life and a smoother, clearer appearance. Once the honey is filtered and pasteurized, if required, it's ready to be bottled. Automated machines fill jars or squeeze bottles with precision, then seal and label them for distribution. From here, the honey is shipped to stores or sold directly to consumers, pure, golden, and ready to enjoy. And there you have it, the incredible journey of honey, from buzzing bees in the fields to that sweet golden drizzle on your morning toast. So next time you enjoy a spoonful of honey, remember, you're tasting the hard work of thousands of bees and a whole lot of teamwork, both insect and human. Who knew the road to sweetness was such a wild flight? If you love this behind-the-scenes look, hit that like button and subscribe. And just in case you have missed some of the older episodes, we have you covered. We've attached a special selection of past Factor Review episodes to this video. So stay with us and enjoy more fascinating food discoveries. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next episode. So imagine this. You're sitting at lunch, about to take a spoonful of your hot mac and cheese that you just pulled out of the oven. But wait a second. Have you ever wondered where that delicious cheese that creates that crispy golden crust came from? Before we get into all the savory details, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss out on our behind-the-scenes tours of the most iconic foods. Let's go over the basics. Cheese starts with milk, preferably from a cow, but sometimes a goat, sheep, or even a buffalo, if you're feeling fancy. The milk is heated, Then rennet and starter cultures are added, which causes the milk to separate into curds and whey. The type of cheese you end up with depends on several factors, like the type of milk, the bacteria used, how long it's aged, and whether or not it's been smoked, salted, or sprinkled with unicorn dust. Okay, not the unicorn dust part. Let's dive in and explore how all these ingredients come together to create the cheese we know and love. There are obviously a whole lot of different cheeses out there, but today, let's look closer at the cheese that you need for a good grilled cheese sandwich or a pizza that just melts perfectly in the oven. And it all starts with something pretty amazing. Happy cows. Yep, it's said that happy cows make the best milk. And some farmers are going the extra mile to make sure their cows are really happy. And when I say happy, I don't just mean giving them a nice cage to sit in and calling it a day. No. We're talking about the full VIP treatment. Picture this, a cow out in the sun, chewing grass like it's got no worries in the world. It's the life, right? These happy cows are free to roam and graze, which means they're producing some of the freshest, creamiest milk possible. Now, when it's time to get that milk, it's all about technique and care. Some farms still do it the old-fashioned way, by hand, if you can believe it. But most farms now use milking machines that gently extract the milk without stressing the cows. Once that milk is fresh and ready, it's time for a quick ride to the dairy factory, where milk gets its glow up and transforms into something we all know and love, cheese. First things first, before we can make cheese, we need to make sure that milk is top quality. So milk is tested to make sure it's fresh and free of any unwanted bacteria. Once everything's approved, we can move on to the next step. Next up, pasteurization. Now, this is a big word, but it's really just a fancy way of saying, let's heat the milk to kill any bad bacteria, but not so hot that we ruin the good stuff. The milk is heated to about 161 degrees Fahrenheit for around 15 seconds, killing off any harmful bacteria without losing the flavor and nutrients we want. But we're not done yet. We've got some special ingredients to add. To turn our milk into cheese, we need to add 2 key ingredients, rennet and starter cultures. The rennet is a special enzyme that helps the milk curdle. Think of it like a magic spell that turns liquid milk into solid curds. And the starter cultures are responsible for giving the cheese its flavor. These are like the little yeasty helpers that say, all right, it's time to start working. As the rennet does its thing, the milk begins to curdle and separate into curds and whey. And just like that, the liquid milk we started with is starting to look more like cheese. Now that the milk's turned into curds, it's time to cut them. But we're not cutting them willy-nilly. Oh no, we've got precision here. The curds are sliced into small uniform pieces, which will help them release the remaining liquid, the whey. And set the stage for that delicious, creamy texture we love. If you've ever seen a giant block of cheese, you can thank this step for that. Next, it's time to cook those curds and give them a gentle stir. The next step is all about getting the perfect texture. The curds are heated up just right to help them firm up and become, well, cheese-like. This is where that smooth, creamy texture starts to come together. It's a delicate balance. Too hot, and you get dry cheese. Too cool, and you're left with a soupy mess. Now it's time for the curds to take center stage. And the whey? Well, it's gotta go. Whey is the liquid that's left after the curds have formed. Some of it is used in other products, like protein powders, or even livestock feed, but most of it is separated and drained away. So long, whey. You had a good run. At this point, the curds are getting pretty solid, so they're gently pressed into molds to remove any leftover whey. And voila! What was once liquid milk is now starting to look a lot more like the cheese we know and love. The final step before the cheese is ready to age, salting. Salt does 2 important things. It adds flavor, and it helps preserve the cheese. This is the step where the cheese gets its signature tang. Whether you're making cheddar, mozzarella, or Gouda, the amount of salt you add will determine how bold and delicious your cheese will be. Too much salt, and it's like you accidentally grabbed the wrong shaker. Too little, and well, It's just not the same. But when it's done, right? You've got that flavor-packed bite that makes your mac and cheese pop. Now, if you're making the cheese that we all like on our grilled sandwich, we are getting into the big leagues. The semi-hard and hard cheeses. These are the workhorses of the cheese world. Aging is like the cheeses climbing up the career ladder, getting even better with time. The aging process can take weeks or even months, depending on the type of cheese you're making. This is where all those complex flavors develop. It's like a cheese getting its PhD in tastiness. Now, let's take cheddar. It's probably the most famous cheese on the planet. The older cheddar gets, the sharper it becomes. A 6-month cheddar, smooth and mild. A 5-year-old cheddar, sharp and full of character. But now over to the final step before your favorite cheese hits the grocery store shelf. Once the cheese has matured, it's time to package it up and ship it out. And voila! That's how milk from a happy cow becomes the cheese you love in your mac and cheese. So, the next time you dive into a cheesy meal, just remember, it all started with a happy cow, some science, and a little bit of patience. And now you're a cheese-making expert too.
Did you know that Ukraine used to be the world's largest producer of sunflower oil? In fact, its vast golden fields supplied nearly half of the global market. But with war disrupting the region, global supply chains have taken a major hit. So, who's stepping up to fill the gap? With Ukraine struggling to sustain its sunflower oil output, other players have rushed in. Russia, led by giants like Rusagro, is now the top global producer, even finding new routes from Baltic terminals to markets in India and Southeast Asia. Meanwhile, Argentina, the EU, and even Serbia's Dijama are scaling up production to meet growing demand. So the world adjusts. But how exactly is sunflower oil made? Let's start back at the source, the fields. Sunflowers are planted in early spring, thriving under long, warm days. As they grow, their golden heads follow the arc of the sun, a phenomenon called heliotropism. By late summer, their petals wither and the heavy heads droop, signaling it's time for harvest. Specialized machines called combine harvesters sweep through the fields, cutting the plants and collecting thousands of seeds per minute. These seeds, small, dark, and packed with oil, are loaded into trucks and sent to the factory. The journey from sunshine to sunflower oil has just begun. But before we step into the factory, I'd like to ask you a question. Are you cooking with sunflower oil? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious to know. And now let's continue with the factory process. At the factory, the seeds arrive dusty and mixed with stems, leaves, and soil. They first pass through vibrating screens to remove large debris, then into air classifiers, where a blast of air lifts away lighter particles like husks and dust. Next, gravity separators sort seeds by weight, removing damaged or empty ones. Finally, magnetic separators catch any stray metal fragments. The clean seeds are dried to the perfect moisture level and stored in silos, fresh, uniform, and ready for processing. From here on out, it's all about unlocking the oil inside. Before oil can be extracted, the sunflower seeds must be dehulled, their tough outer shells removed. Inside high-speed dehulling machines, the seeds are cracked open using impact and friction. The broken shells are then separated from the kernels using airflow and sieves. The result? Clean, oil-rich kernels, the part we actually want, ready for crushing. The discarded hulls are often reused for fuel, feed, or even industrial materials. Nothing goes to waste. The dehulled kernels are ground into a coarse paste called seed meal, thick, gritty, and rich with trapped oil. This paste is gently heated to about 60 to 70 degrees Celsius in conditioning tanks. The warmth softens the meal, loosens the oil, and deactivates enzymes that could spoil the final product. Now warm and pliable, the seed meal is ready for the next big step, extraction. At the heart of any oil mill lies one of the most powerful machines on the floor, the screw press, also known as the expeller. The preconditioned seed paste is fed into the press through a hopper at the top. Inside, a giant rotating screw, housed within a tightly fitted metal barrel, begins its work. As the screw turns, it pushes the seed paste forward along its spiral groove, applying increasing pressure with each inch. The The space between the screw and the barrel becomes narrower, and the pressure builds, slowly crushing the paste, cell by cell. Under this intense compression, the oil begins to seep out. Small perforations in the barrel allow the liquid to escape, while the solid residue, now called oil cake or press cake, continues to move forward and is eventually expelled out the end. The first trickles of oil are thick, dark, and warm. This is known as crude sunflower oil, unfiltered, unrefined, and full of tiny seed particles. It may not look like much yet, but it's packed with potential. Meanwhile, the leftover press cake still holds a small amount of oil. Some factories stop here, using the press cake as high-protein animal feed, but others go a step further, sending the cake through a solvent extraction unit, where a chemical like hexane is used to draw out the remaining oil. This method allows for nearly complete oil recovery, especially in large-scale operations. Whether the oil comes from pressing or solvent extraction, it's then sent through a settling tank, where gravity allows heavy solids to sink and light particles to float, helping to begin the initial purification process. The crude sunflower oil flows from the press into a holding tank, where gravity does some of the initial work. Over several hours, heavier particles sink to the bottom, while lighter ones float. This natural separation gives the first layer of purification. But gravity alone isn't enough. The oil still contains fine sediments, gums, and microscopic solids, all of which must be removed before refining. That's where mechanical filtration comes in. The oil is pumped through a series of filter presses, powerful machines that use layers of tightly woven cloth or paper filter sheets to trap solid impurities. As the oil moves through, particles larger than a few microns are caught in the mesh, while the purified oil flows through. Depending on the factory, this process might happen in multiple stages, each filter finer than the last, removing progressively smaller contaminants. These filters are often arranged in a closed loop, so there's no contact with air, helping preserve freshness and prevent oxidation. What's left is a much cleaner product, filtered sunflower oil that now looks clearer, flows more easily, and has shed most of its impurities. But it still isn't quite finished. While the filtration stage improves clarity and removes debris, the oil still contains natural gums, waxes, free fatty acids, pigments, and odors, all of which affect its stability, flavor, and shelf life. To get it ready for cooking, bottling, and storage, the oil now heads to one of the most critical stages in the entire process, refining. Refining is where chemistry, engineering, and food science all come together, and it happens in a series of tightly controlled stages, each targeting a specific impurity, each bringing the oil one step closer to purity. The first challenge? Gums. These naturally occurring phospholipids are sticky and make the oil cloudy. To remove them, the oil is gently mixed with hot water or dilute acid in a reaction tank. This causes the gums to coagulate, clumping together so they can be separated from the oil. After neutralization, the oil is washed several times with warm, soft water to remove any remaining soap, salt, or chemical residues. Finally, the last, and perhaps most critical, step, deodorization. Though the oil is now clean, it still retains subtle aromas from the original seed. To remove them, the oil is heated under vacuum, often up to 180 to 230 degrees Celsius, while a stream of steam is passed through it. The steam strips away volatile compounds and odor molecules, leaving the oil neutral, mild, and ready for any cuisine. This final stage also helps destroy any remaining microbes, giving the oil a long shelf life without preservatives. At this point, the transformation is complete. But there's one final step before it reaches your table: bottling and packaging. Automatic machines fill bottles at high speed, seal them, and label each one with batch numbers and expiry dates. Then bottles are boxed, stacked, and shipped, headed to supermarkets, restaurants, and kitchens around the world. Thanks for joining us on this exciting food journey. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the foods that shape our world. And just in case you have missed some of the older episodes, we have you covered. We have attached a special selection of past Factory View episodes to this video. So stay with us and enjoy more fascinating food discoveries. See you in the next episode.